How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it this time with a late night edition of a Big Mets update segment. Not exactly sure when this video will be dropping, but it might be pretty late, so apologies in advance to you guys. But I had myself a jam-packed day as I've arrived in Port St. Lucie. As you see beside me there, I was attending that Mets game there at the Marlins facilities in Jupiter as the Mets defeated Miami today, March 8th, 2025, by a final score of 7-3. And I'm going to get into my firsthand takeaway, witnessing with my own eyes Juan Soto in a Mets uniform and casually playing his best game as a Met yet. This trumps the previous games where he's hit towering home runs opposite field, and we'll get into why exactly that is, along with other key performances from guys like David Peterson and Jose Urena, who made his long-awaited, highly anticipated Mets spring debut, who will be a swingman option for the Mets to impact their rotation and their bullpen right away to begin the 2025 season. And to round out the show, some unfortunate news on the Nimmo front, which leads us to a great question. Should we be concerned with this health status as Nimmo has received, and what I think we could all agree, what is a setback from what he was initially supposed to be doing, which was going to be in the Mets lineup for their Sunday day game? That is obviously not happening now. We'll get into why exactly that is, along with all the latest here in Mets land, as Wardy has a lot to break down, as we have a live show that we'll be doing this Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern in Port St. Lucie from the main Duffy Sports Bar there with the bowling alley. If you guys want to chime in, it'll be me, Jim from Ballcap Sports, Mike from Stark Raving Sports, Robbie Hyde Baseball may be joining us, maybe some current players too, so be on the lookout. And we're going to be not only having fun for north of an hour, chopping up for the latest news and rumors of Mets land, especially spring training related from our experiences at the games, along with bowling with a lot of you amazing subscribers after our show there at Duffy. So I hope to see you guys there. But let me see your initial reactions, the comments down below to the continued dominance that is Juan Soto this spring training. Let me know, how ecstatic are you to see what Juan Soto is going to do in a full 162 and a Metropolitan uniform, guys? Because I can't wait. Shout out to our amazing sponsor at BetUS that has you covered with all your sports betting needs, obviously, folks. But let's get into it right away with the key takeaways from this 7-3 victory. And I will just say, first and foremost, what a great day it was there at Jupiter, at the ballpark there, Roger Dean, that is hosted by the Marlins and the Cardinals. Love the atmosphere around the ballpark, too. It's very unique. You know, they had a nice strip where people were drinking on the street, hanging out in different bar areas. I know that Evan Roberts was doing a live show for his podcast Through the Fan that we saw at Doss's beer garden over there, and I actually got a chance to meet Evan, and we're going to be doing some fun stuff in the future, so be on the lookout for that, Mets fans. To all my Evan Roberts and Wardy fans, this is probably the best news that you could possibly hope for, so be on the lookout for that later on this month. But Evan, who I had a great conversation with, as I did with a lot of amazing Mets subscribers that are followers of mine, so it was great to interact with you guys. But I gotta say, as awesome as those interactions were, there's nothing greater than seeing Juan Soto in a Mets jersey, and then for him to casually have his best game as a New York Met so far. And in case you're wondering what exactly Wardy's referring to here, well, let me just show you guys. Juan Soto in the 7-3 victory was the key standout that we saw on the offensive end. And here's a little clip that I showed of him running to first base that I actually made myself there when attending today's game. Now, Juan Soto won 3 for 3 that we saw, but it's the quality of the at-bats that stand out so much. Even those towering home runs that he's hit this spring are awesome. Nothing beat what we saw today. Absolute scorching liners, true ropes, every single baseball he made contact with in the first inning after Luis Angel Acuna, who leads off the game there as a plate setter, starting in shortstop and getting a little bit of an infield dribbler that he bolts down the line right away, safe at first base, because of course he does in Acuna. He's then driven in by a scorching RBI double by Soto. Soto is then driven in by his good friend and Jose Siri with an RBI sac fly, and it's quickly 2-0 Mets before you know it. As we got to the third inning, Juan Soto with another huge hit that he tried to leg a single into a double. This time he got a little overzealous. The legs were not catching up with him, and he was out at second, but I do appreciate the hustle aspect from Juan Soto. But let's not have a Harrison Bader situation where we're trying to leg singles into doubles, right? But in all seriousness, if anyone's going to do it and do it wrong and get away with it, it's going to be Juan, because of how much offensive upside he still has. Doesn't matter how much of a liability he is in right field at times. Doesn't matter if he's going to have an off game here or there. Juan Soto is your $800+ million man for a reason, and it's quality at bats, it's effortless at bats that we saw today, that I saw in person, that further proved just how much on another level he is than the average batter in baseball, which makes a lot of sense why Juan Soto's WRC plus was right around 60 to 80% better than the average batter in baseball last year. So yeah, Juan Soto's pretty good. It's almost like the Mets invested in him heavily for a reason. But that was an awesome clip that we saw there. Here is another one as well from when he had his first RBI double that we saw today, and that was fantastic to see. And he was going the other way that we saw that one, hitting off the wall. We love to see that for Mr. Juan Soto, and the Mets took themselves a quick 2-0 lead from there that we saw. But now, folks, to talk more on not only the performance from Juan Soto, that I want to know in the comments down below, what is your biggest takeaway from Soto's at-bats so far this spring? And what is your 2025 162 expectations for Soto? I'd love to hear that in the comments down below. But when we talk more on the pitching end, everybody, there are some massive standouts here. And we will get into more on the offense too. Don't worry. I'm not going to just deviate from what guys like Brett Baty and Donovan Walton did tonight as they're competing for that utility role. But I really want to emphasize the pitching because this is notable. David Pearson has now pitched 7 scoreless innings so far this spring for the New York Mets, including just that 1 hit or so, a couple walks, a couple strikeouts. Peterson was working the zone beautifully, and as my man Isaac Rothman, our awesome pitching contributor that I finally had the chance to meet in person today. Shout out to you, Isaac. Looking forward to seeing you at more games of spring training here over the next couple days. He was breaking down pretty well on, kind of knowing what pitch is coming out of the hand of David Pearson based on not only his arsenal, but certain things you're looking for. And it was cool to see him utilize his entire 5 to 6 pitch mix today. The sinker topped out that we saw 93, sat right around 91. The slide piece topped out at 86, sat right around 84. Four seam topped out at 94 and sat right around 92. Curveball topped out at 78, 79 and sat 78. And the changeup as well was sitting right around 84 miles per hour. So Peterson was working the outs and however which way he needs to. He's not an analytics darling by any stretch. Peterson is one of these guys that has really went against the expected numbers in recent years and has just been able to give us some quality outings, which was the case pretty much all of last year when he came back from his hip surgery there in June. And Peterson not only looked strong today, but the entire Mets pitching staff did. Danny Young came in and had himself a strong inning or so work with a sinker, sweeper, cutter mix. And while Young is a solid low leverage lefty option, I like the upside more when Genesis Cabrera personally, but we'll see who wins that battle in the end when evaluating the bullpen. Austin Warren came in as well, gave the Mets some innings of work that we saw. Warren gave the Mets at least 1, including those 2 hits that he gave up. And then Jose Urena came in, and while Jose Urena did give up obviously some hits, it doesn't change his immediate impact they had for the Mets. He gave up a couple hits. He gave up those 2 runs, but none of them were earned that we saw. Urena, again, doesn't really matter if he gave up 10 runs or no runs in this one. It's just great to see him out there making his Mets debut. And to give you guys an idea on the arsenal, you got the slider, and we know he's a heavy sinker slider guy, which is why the Mets like him a lot. That's been their MO with pitchers over the past year plus. Sinker, sliders, splitty, sweepers, all the S's is what David Stearns and Mendoza loves. The slider, though, sitting at 87 today. The sinker sitting 96, changeup that we saw sitting 88, and the 4-seam sitting 96 as well while touching 97. So a lot of velocity, a lot of late movement with Urena, who posted a sub-3 ERA as a reliever and 64 2/3 innings for the Texas Rangers last year. Definitely a guy to continue to follow this spring training as the Mets obviously brought him in after the injuries of guys like Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea. Then we had Herget and my guy Yaxel Rios come in. Sadly, Rios did give up some runs in the end, but he is one of these many arms, just like Rico Garcia, that will probably not break the team out of camp for the bullpen, but will be guys that impact the Mets out of the bullpen this year. So certainly keep an eye on them. And on the offensive end for the Mets in this one, they had a couple standouts outside of Juan Soto, and one that I thought was notable came in the 6th inning, and it was Brett the Met Baty ripping an absolute scorching RBI double. Baty looked fantastic that we saw today. He went 1 for 4, including that RBI double that we saw, and he's batting .375 with over 1,000 OPS so far this spring. We've also seen in the case of some other guys like Joey Meneses, who had himself a really nice home run today. Joey Meneses' first home run this spring training, if I'm not mistaken, the former Washington National turned backup first base option for the Mets. And Joey wasn't the only backup first base option for the Mets that hit today, as Jared Young, who got the start at DH in the 8-hole, gave the Mets an RBI single, as we also saw Donovan Walton, who's competing against Brett Baty for that final utility role on the roster. He ripped himself an RBI double as well, but we saw that inning come to an end as Jared Young was called out there getting to third base. Regardless, though, some strong offensive production from the lab that from top down began with Acuna in leadoff, Soto 2nd, Winker 3rd, Siri 4th, Baty 5th, Cheren 6th, 7th Meneses, 8th Young, and 9 Donovan Walton. And then you had your minor leaguers, your non-roster invites that came in later on in the game. Peterson, everyone else in the pitching staff looks strong, everybody. So continue to let me know your key takeaways for the Mets 7-3 victory and just your overall thoughts on Mets spring training to this point and what you've liked so much about it, maybe what you haven't liked so much much about it, because when we talk about things that I personally don't like to get into, when we talk about spring training, it's really hard to avoid talking about the inevitable, which is the constant injuries that have happened. This has been a thorn in the Mets side each and every year when we evaluate spring training, but that continued out as we saw. And as you guys can see from this clip here from Carlos Mendoza, I won't play the audio because the caption speaks for itself there that you guys can see. But Carlos Mendoza said that Brandon Nimmo had an injection that we saw on his right knee, basically a PRP injection, whatever that's going to be, and there will be no baseball activities for 48 to 72 hours, and then they'll ramp him up again. Why am I concerned as a Mets fan with this? I don't see Brandon Nimmo getting any better, truthfully, when it comes to the lingering health issues. This is something that I think is going to continue to linger throughout the course of the year. Not that this sole knee is going to be a problem, but rather that there's going to be, whether it's things with the plantar fasciae slightly acting up, which is why he hasn't been able to run 100% yet this spring, that he's confident that he can do. Now it's the right knee soreness, which is a little underwhelming, just because 48 hours ago or so, it was announced that Brandon Nimmo was going to be in the Mets lineup for their Sunday day game. Now he's not going to pick up a bat. He's not going to do baseball for 2 or 3 days, and then he's going to ramp up from then. Everything is leading towards Brandon Nimmo not necessarily being 100% to begin the regular season, meaning that he might be a little behind. And knowing that you're putting a PRP injection in that knee, or whatever injection you're doing, is telling that you're trying to just get rid of that pain and hope that that helps subside, when for all we know, there could be something more going on there. It might be something that he has to play with throughout the course of the year, just like how Starling Marte played most of last year with a sore knee, with that bone bruise that he said himself that he continues to battle through. In the case of Nimmo, who isn't getting a younger, I'm not overly encouraged to see this exactly, but I'm at least encouraged knowing that the Mets have a solid amount of outfield depth that they can weigh and consider, which is why guys like Alexander Canario, who the Mets acquired via trade from the Cubs, makes a lot of sense as to why he may crack this roster. Not only do you have health uncertainty where Starling Marte may begin the year on the injured list if he can't get in game action in time, or at least he's not going to be obviously with the team right away if he has to ramp up there through the minor leagues, and if Brandon Nimmo has some lingering things heading into the year, you might have a lot of outfield depth, but that depth quickly diminishes. And that goes in hand with why Jesse Winker, who I will say looked very good in left field today, made some really good catches in left field. You're probably going to see more Jesse Winker corner outfield reps than you initially expected, which is going to create a greater door for the DH position should that be the case. Meaning that when you look at guys in Brett Beatty, Donovan Walton, to a lesser extent Luis Angel Acuna, competing for a roster spot, there might be a greater opportunity now with one of these outfielders at least being banged up, if not both of them. But Canario just needs to continue to prove himself this spring because he looks like a great lock. Or the Mets may also go down a route where they give True a lot of the keys to one of Beatty, Walton, or Acuna at second base to begin the year, because they give McNeil more corner outfield reps because they're down, say, one of Marte or Nimmo, or they're a little banged up, so they maybe want to give them some DH reps. Maybe Winker's going to come off the bench some games. There's various ways that obviously Carlos Mendoza can go about this utilization for his lineup, but I do think that every fan has the right to have at least a sliver of concern, a level of concern, because one, it's the Mets, anything can happen, and two, when it comes to an aging outfielder, Nimmo, who sadly is on a contract that I don't see aging entirely well, just based on what he's unfortunately went through the past couple years with injury. Hope I'm wrong, obviously, knocking on wood, and I love Brandon just as much as the next Mets fan, but it's a great reality that he's not getting any younger, and he's on a little bit of an inflated contract, and the Mets need to make sure that they're smart by having as much diverse options out there. Marte can't play the outfield right now. Nimmo's limited. Canario can play all outfield positions. Jose Azocar's looked great this spring as well, but is he really going to crack a roster spot? I'll have to see it to believe it, obviously. So there are avenues that Carlos Mendoza has and will continue to ponder and consider when evaluating the health statuses of guys like Marte and Nimmo. But I think it's fair to say that the Mets will have these reoccurring problems throughout the year in certain areas with the outfield. And in the case of Nimmo, whether it's something that will be nipped in the butt throughout the course of the year that maybe he just grinds through and he gets healthy automatically from, or if it's something that he really needs to grind through to the point where it is kind of being a liability, it's making him a liability, it's impacting his game. If that is the case, then the Mets are going to need to reevaluate and make smart and proper decisions. So it's going to be a fascinating one to follow. I'm never happy to talk about injury-related things when we talk about the Mets, but sadly, that's a common occurrence, especially in spring training. The good news, Juan Soto's on our baseball team, and they have a lot of things riding for them in the right direction, including a guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing in his latest spring outing in person person this time for the first time, and Clay Holmes, as he'll be toeing the rubber in the Mets day game this Sunday. I'll be breaking down the key takeaways from that, along with plenty more in our live show. Again, live from Duffy's Sports Bar, the big one with the bowling alley, 8 p.m. Eastern, March 9th in Port St. Lucie. I cannot wait to see so many of you amazing Mets fans there. Now, before we get out of here, everybody, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything that I want to share. This was a clip that Evan Roberts posted earlier of Juan Soto when he went oppo for that double. That was pretty sick, that you guys can see there. Very, very cool. And then we also have Kodai Senga. We have a little bit of an update on him. His next start will be in a minor league scrimmage on Sunday. Clay Holmes will be on the mound, obviously, for the game. And Kodai getting back out there is important, and it was great to see also Kodai, after his couple innings of work the other day, throw a bullpen after the fact and work more on his pitches and be pretty confident in what he was doing there. So that is going to do it, everybody, for our latest Big Mets Update segment. I'd like to sincerely thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did enjoy our segment, please let us know your biggest takeaway in the comments down below, and be on the lookout, as Wardy will have not only a live show tomorrow, but more content rolling out all spring training long, all regular season long, and all off-season long here on the WardyNYM platform. Thank you guys again. As always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.